power in the verse can stop me.
What's going on, guys? My name is El Dinero, and welcome to episode 43 of The Midnight Hour. I'm joined today by my original co-host, who has evolved and come from out of the shadows where he's been for the last year, from Atlantis, no doubt. It's Jack.
Wow, and the crowd goes quiet.
Yeah.
I'm back. I've finally quit my job, which has been what's been holding me back for the last year, essentially. You know, as they do, those bloody jobs.
The Midnight Hour has finally got corporate sponsorship, and now you can quit your job and do this full time. So
No, exactly, yeah.
for anyone who doesn't think I make a lot of YouTube money, you guys don't even know.
Oh,
Basically, for every view this show gets, we each get $5.
$5 whole dollars.
Exactly. So, yep, that's what's gonna be happening. Lots more The Midnight Hour. No, that's not true. Lots of regular The Midnight Hour, maybe. We'll see. Anyways, we don't really have a particular topic or pattern planned for this episode, but we think you're gonna really like what we have to talk about. So, starting off is a story that has fascinated me for a very long time, and we've kind of toyed with this over the last few weeks. We've had stories of people who have died and then seen things after they've died. But this one is a lot different because this revolves around a woman by the name of Pam Reynolds. Now, she had a brain aneurysm, as far as I know, in the year 1991 when she was 35 years old. This needed surgery or she would have died, and only a few surgeons in the world could complete this kind of surgery because it involves stopping the heart and draining the blood from the brain in order to operate. So, like, in England, if your heart stops, you're clinically dead, but most places in the world, you're not clinically dead until your brain stops, because that's when it gets serious. So, to live during this surgery, you essentially have to die. But the reason this is such a different story, such a different near-death experience, is that Pam Reynolds saw herself floating above her body while she was in the surgery. That's not too unusual for near-death experiences. It's very unusual out with that bracket.
No, yeah.
But she actually witnessed the doctors operating on her using tools that she'd never seen before but was able to accurately describe. Like, she described the tool they used, I think maybe to cut her skull open, as something that looked like an electric toothbrush. She saw the boxes with all the heads for this tool that looked like cabinets that her dad used to have in his shed and things like that. But her brain had no blood flowing through it during this time, and there was no brain activity at all. So, in order to be able to witness this, you kind of have to go with the supernatural thing, I guess. But she then saw, like, a bright white light, which is kind of typical. She followed it and had a very deep conversation with her grandmother, because she was wondering if she deserved to be in heaven, and her grandmother was like, look, like, people mess things up. I think she said, you were a child, and you spilled milk. That's not important. What's important is how you clean it up. So that's obviously a metaphor that reflects how good of a person she's grown into. She was told she wasn't allowed to follow the light, but realized that she was standing in the breath of God. As the surgery came to a close, she got closer and closer to returning to her body, which was being warmed up by the paramedics. And then she tried to fight against it because she didn't actually want to go back. But as they kick-started her heart, she fell back into her body and said it was really, really cold and really terrifying. And then she described what she'd undergone, essentially. And the doctors were all baffled because of the fact that there was no brain activity, no brain waves, nothing, no blood going to the brain. How fucked up is that?
It's so fucked up in so many ways, and like I don't know, I want to think that there's, you know, some plausible explanation for this, like, you know, the explaining the being able to explain and describe the tool that they used to cut open their skull. You know, maybe she saw it in a TV show, or you know your brain, like the human brain is a fucking amazing thing. It, you know, you might not think you know something or remember something because it doesn't lodge there. You know, you don't log it, like, you know, you don't mean to, but it will store every bit of information you take in. So, you know, obviously brain surgery is kind of a big deal, and there is no there's no reason why it couldn't have triggered something or hit a part of the brain, or something was triggered to make her remember this thing. And I mean, it's completely plausible, I suppose, that she built this all up and created this under anesthesia, either before they stopped her heart or just after.
Yeah, that is possible, because a dream can be like you could be asleep for 50 seconds, but you could dream something that feels like it's about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, what is it? They say, you're when you sleep, say you sleep for 8 hours, you have thousands and thousands of dreams.
Oh yeah, you don't remember a dream unless you wake up in the middle of it. That's
you have dreams can last, dreams can be over like that, or they can last for what feels like days and months.
Yeah.
So, and they can all happen in the space of a second.
I had a dream really recently, right, where this woman was really emphatically speaking, and I woke up just as she finished her sentence, but what she said was, "I have vowed to end the fear, and I believe my dreams hold the key," right? And I thought, that is really fucking profound. And I googled it, and it is a direct quote from the Final Fantasy movie from 2001, right? I've seen that movie once in the cinema when I was 10 years old. How do I know that quote? How did that come back? This was like a week ago I had this dream. It was bizarre and mind-blowing, but that is the power of the brain, essentially.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, things like deja vu show that as well.
Yeah.
Like, deja vu, that whole feeling of going into somewhere that you've never been before, or, seeing something you've never seen before, and feeling that sense of familiarity. That is most likely, I mean, as far as I'm aware, I've seen the explanation that is your brain finding something that is similar to it, but obviously it doesn't have a solid image of what that is. So say you're going into a building in a foreign country that you've never been to before, and you recognise the building. That's because you've been into a similar building somewhere else, and your brain's putting two and two together and going, this is similar to that other building you're in. But obviously it can't bring up the exact building or the exact place and the exact time.
Yeah, so it gets confused and trips over itself.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that she had such a profound experience and was able to explain it, and it's this huge sort of thing. I had surgery 4 months ago, and I woke up after and said, as soon as I woke up, I said to the doctor, this is 100% true, I said, Goofy, what is he? Because if he's a dog, then he has a pet dog, because Pluto is Goofy's pet dog.
Yeah.
So what the hell is Goofy? And I said that, and the doctor was like, oh, I don't know, what is Goofy? And all of the other nurses were there trying to figure it out as they wheeled me back to my bed. And that's the thing, like, she has this incredible experience where she meets a deceased relative and learns something about herself, like, forms a bond with every single fibre of existential dread that she previously had, wakes up fully comforted and warmed and everything, and I want to know what Goofy is. And that upsets me, knowing that the differences in those stories. That's fucked up.
No, yeah. What I don't understand is that, like, her grandmother speaks to her in this kind of, this kind of grandiose metaphor.
Yeah.
And I just struggle to believe that without her kind of making it up, I don't think that grandiose. I think that the grandiose metaphor is too almost like something out of literature.
I thought that as soon as I heard it. The way she describes it is like, you were a child, we sent you away.
Yeah.
Like, she says it in a very just
poetic.
Emphatic, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's a little too poetic to be, something that something that came about organically.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think if I had a near-death experience, I would have a metaphor regarding milk involved. Personally, I mean, Pam Reynolds might be a different case.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they'd speak to me, my deceased relatives would speak to me in metaphors. Because surely you're short on time.
Yeah.
In that kind of afterlife purgatory world.
Well, she was under for 10 hours.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But what's, I think, just the most bizarre thing, like, beyond our cynicism towards whether or not this, it points to an afterlife or whatever, the fact that she actually did hallucinate or well, did essentially have this experience while there was no brainwave activity, because it's very likely that,
Yeah.
like, I mean, if she witnessed the, it's very likely that if she did witness the drill going on and things like that, those are things that sync up to dream. Like, sometimes dreams and reality actually can coexist in the same thing. I've had many dreams where, I had this one dream one time that I was in some city somewhere, and there was a robbery going on, and it was my job to press the alarm. I think I was in a bank and I had to press the alarm, but as soon as I like smashed the glass, my phone alarm went off and I woke up, and that's the reason I remember that. But I think my brain knew it was nearly time to wake up, so it made that happen in the dream, because I find that to be way too much of a coincidence that I smashed the glass and then the alarm goes off. So, like, that's an example of reality kind of intertwining with a dream.
Yeah, I mean, there was something that I just thought about saying it being a dream, and something that science really can't prove per se. But there was, I think it was in a book. There was a thing about this guy. He had made a scale that was incredibly set of scales that was, size of his bed, essentially. And he was on his deathbed and he was dying. And then as he died, the scale showed like not even milligrams, less than milligrams, the tiniest of grams, the tiniest weight possible, and that represented his soul leaving his body.
Oh, I've heard this. I think it's 7 grams. The body weighs 7 grams less than it does when you're alive.
Yeah. That might just be air escaping from your lungs or something like that. I don't know, but this was something like this guy. I have the feeling it was in a Dan Brown book. That sounds like something he'd write.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, but yeah, and saying so propose say that everyone does have a soul, apart from us two, obviously, because Ginger. So say everybody does have a soul, and while the brain activity might have stopped, that doesn't mean her soul had left her body. And what kind of memories, experiences, maybe that was coming. I know this sounds ridiculous, but
well, like
you get the idea. That could have been, just because there was no brain activity doesn't mean her soul wasn't still active.
Yeah, I kind of tread with trepidation when it comes to people's perception of things like that, because who are you to fucking belittle someone else's beliefs? You don't
exactly.
know either, so it's really egotistical to imply that you do. But my cousin was telling me once about I had this phase where I was really interested in a drug called dimethyltryptamine, which is its shortened name is DMT. There's a documentary about it called The Spirit Molecule, and there's all of these just fascinating kind of. There's just a large mythology surrounding it, particularly in stoner culture.
Yeah.
You can make of that what you will, but there's this supposed theory that there's a certain amount of DMT you can take where I think it's maybe a modified brand of DMT or something, but you can see everything existing as pure energy.
Oof.
And there's a pretty much energy just exists. It's not a renewable thing in everything is energy and everything has energy. And when you die, that energy that you have just goes somewhere else. So a lot of people think that that's what the soul is. It's just your energy. It just goes and carries on somewhere else. That's why I think it's a huge thing for people who believe in reincarnation, that is essentially one form, at least metaphorically, of reincarnation, is that your energy is going to enter someone else, because it just exists in the world. I find that to be a weird thing. I don't really know a lot about that, though, because I was not good at science, so I don't really know. I can only speak in metaphors and poetic philosophical things, but not really mathematical or scientific things, so I don't know how ridiculous that sounds.
Yeah, it's funny you say about the DMT seeing everything as energy, because this happened a few years ago now. It was one of my friends. He explained this moment he had while he was intoxicated. and he was sat in his bedroom with a couple of his friends, and it was dark, and they were listening to. He described it as I can't quite remember what he described it as, but it was quite ethereal. And he said that he just looked down, and his whole body was outlined, like all of his limbs and his hands and his fingers were outlined in different colours.
Jesus.
And then they rose up and danced in front of him.
Oh my god.
So he experienced that.
That's fucked up.
He said it was really he wasn't scared or anything. It was really enjoyable to watch. To watch his, it was this outline of him, but it was like, the hue kind of thing. All of the colours merged into one another, and there's kind of like a rainbow around him, and they danced for him.
Kind of like in The Simpsons when they're in the flotation tanks.
Yeah.
Homer and Lisa, and I think she sees the colours in front of her. I think that's the first thing she sees.
Yeah, something like that.
That's crazy. Was he on drugs?
Yes.
That explains.
Yep. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's interesting though.
Yeah,
I kind of like stories like that.
Yeah. You can definitely have some interesting experiences.
Yeah. And what we're saying here, kids, is just take a bunch of heroin. Like, you don't know.
Just all of it at once.
Yeah, just take all of the heroin. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, come on, really?
Yeah, live a little, you guys. I guess that's the thing that science can't explain, though, is the Pam Reynolds case, because we don't know without. Well, she's dead now, so we probably never will know. She died in 2010, I think. But seeing as science can't explain that, we'll move on to another thing that science can't explain, which is a town in Kazakhstan by the name of Kalachi, which, I don't really know. I hadn't heard of this until this morning, but I've been reading about it, and it is very, very, very interesting. The people in the town of Kalachi are sort of the victim to this epidemic that causes them to experience fatigue, memory loss, hallucinations, and long bouts of unexpected narcolepsy. It's really strange because there's a town quite near Kalachi that has a huge mine, which is uranium, I think. It's a uranium mine. And it's really, really close to Kalachi, so the leading theory is that the people are under the effects of radiation poisoning. But there's another town that's even closer to the uranium mine than Kalachi is, and nobody there has a single problem. They also have done blood tests on all of these victims, and the blood has turned out to be completely fine, so it doesn't seem like it can be radiation poisoning. It's just that maybe it's some of the symptoms of radiation poisoning, so it would make sense. But they just tend to, they can stay awake for days, or they can just fall asleep randomly, or they can forget everything that happens, or hallucinate things that happen, and that's just so fucked up that an entire town has fallen to this seemingly sort of hysteria, I guess is what it would be, because there's no scientific explanation. So there's, I read this story one time about, I think it was in Japan or China, but these guys were, they had sex with prostitutes, just people in general having sex with prostitutes, and even though they used protection and things like that, the shame of doing it, they were made to feel so ashamed because they come from a culture where infidelity is the utmost shameful thing. And so their bodies started to exhibit symptoms of AIDS. They had actual symptoms of AIDS. They were actually dying despite being perfectly healthy.
Jesus.
Because of the shame of having sex with a prostitute and cheating on their wives. And I think this could be a similar thing where maybe there's some sort of other thing at play that, maybe people think they have uranium-related radiation poisoning, and that's why they're acting that way.
Yeah.
Because people just tend to act the same as each other in really weird ways like that,
Yeah, but when we're saying small, this is a town of 600 people.
Yeah.
There, one of the possibilities is that it could be genetic.
Yeah, that's true.
A town of 600, a small town in Kazakhstan, it could always be genetic, and obviously, the human human genes are endlessly complex.
Yeah.
And who's to say that they've been able to get the kind of that kind of testing for radiation poisoning is easy enough. Unraveling the human genetics just to find a sleeping kind of illness is a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it is. Were you able to find how many people have come down with these symptoms?
It was 1 in 4.
Yeah, that's
and that's
gigantic
ridiculous.
number.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's possible that they would all share genes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not likely that everybody within that village only breeds with people within
No,
that
yeah.
village. I mean, that 1 in 4. What is that out of 600? That's like 175 or so. I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
I really hope that's
Let's
right.
let's just do the math. Let's do the actual math.
It's
150. 150. Yeah, that makes sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
That would make sense.
Yeah, because 2 of that is 300.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. So bad. But yeah, so 150 out of 600 have these symptoms. That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Like that kind of says to me that it must be hysteria. It must be
Yeah.
a purely unconscious sort of thing that
Yeah.
their body has just decided to do for whatever reason. Like maybe they I don't know. Like I went for dinner with someone recently, and they got a burger that was like luminous pink.
Oh wow.
And like it's actually usually it's okay to eat beef that's like that
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you know for a fact that it has been stored correctly and things like that. But like she felt sick after.
Oh
even
really?
though she was perfectly fine. Like the body can just do that.
Yeah.
So like maybe it's a reaction to something like that. I don't really know. But it's very, very, very bizarre. Like
That is weird.
just if you lived in a town like that where people just regularly just fall asleep
for days, hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were talking. I think about 6 months ago there was strong talk of everybody just being relocated because I think they really do believe that it's some kind of radiation related thing.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that even if it was a mass hysteria thing and it was all in their heads, if they relocated, it would probably go away.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy how you can kind of hack your mind like that to just behave in a certain way. I don't know. I find stuff like that can really help you out sometimes. Like,
No, yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes like feelings of anxiety can be really close to feelings of like pure elation and stuff. So
Yeah.
if you're anxious about something, you can turn it into excitement if you just try to. I don't know. It's a thing I've been working on.
Thinking differently is the ability to think differently for certain things is it's a funny thing. Like it can really change. Just a lot of people that say they've got a clinical depression. They're going out for a walk, taking the dog for a walk or something like that can genuinely make just them feel better.
Yeah.
Straight away, they don't need medicating or anything like that. They just need to go outside sometimes.
I saw this thing that there was this bridge somewhere that was a popular suicide spot, and the bridge was red, so they painted it blue, and that led to like an instant drop in the number of suicides there. And they like I can't remember where I even heard that. I listened to a podcast about a year ago about colors and how colors actually affect you, because blue is a huge blue I think drains melatonin, and that's why staring at computer screens makes it difficult to sleep, because there tends to be a lot of blue in like your computer screen. That's like my backgrounds are different colors because of that, and I kind of avoid the color blue for that reason. But yeah, I don't know what draining melatonin has to do with keeping you alive. I don't really know what the science behind that is, but it's a thing that legitimately worked. Like, and there's numbers there to back it up and everything. So that's crazy. But just another example of how the mind works, I guess.
Yeah.
And how there's so many ways that that's why it's such a popular tactic for filmmakers to say you can only access 6% of your brain. Imagine what you could do with 4%, because there's so much of it that we actually don't understand, even though the 6% theory is bullshit.
Oh no, yeah, completely.
Yeah, it's kind of it's close enough to be like,
no, yeah, Well, I think that whole 6%. I mean, I've heard 10, 12, 15, however many percent you want, but I think that whole thing stems again from what I was talking about earlier about your brain logging it away and not you're not consciously logging it away, but it being there
Yeah.
always. And say you can only access 10% of your brain, and that's your direct memories. If you could access all of them, obviously you'd be a lot better. But
Yeah.
it brings it. But if you were to remember all of them all at once, all the time, you'd be in a lot of trouble.
You'd be insane, yes.
No, yeah, you'd just go clinically insane.
I think the brain can only actually intake something like, I think it's 11,000 images per day.
Mhm.
And supposedly in America, you're exposed to something like 25,000 images of adverts per day.
Fucking
So
hell.
it's crazy how your brain is essentially getting overloaded with advertising, and you think advertising doesn't work, but it fucking does. But yeah, like the amount of images you can intake in one day as well relates to this thing that I heard someone explaining about 6 months ago that made a lot of sense. Is that when you walk into a room and you scan it, when you leave that room, you have an idea of what it is in your head, but it's not a photograph of the room.
No.
You actually leave out so many things that you don't know are there, because if you were to take them all in, you would go insane with that information.
Yeah.
It's something you see in movies a lot, is like a character has a memory of an event, usually a traumatic event, and they remember being in a certain place at a certain time, and they get flashbacks of this memory, and because they get flashbacks, they continue to analyze the memory and analyze it, and they find new information that they didn't know before. That's not a thing that can happen.
No, yeah.
Your memory
The
isn't a
information just
photograph.
isn't there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
it's not like
a-
you can zoom in
yeah,
and enhance. Yeah.
it's not a YouTube video saved to your favorites that you can scan back over. Like it's and generally, the more you remember something, the more hazy that memory becomes.
Yeah.
So it's
the brain is a funny thing, and so your eyes. I mean, I heard someone. I've tried it a few times. I think it genuinely does work, and I don't know if that's just placebo of me being more careful. But if you're looking for something in your room, or if you're looking for something just anywhere, because we read, English left to right.
yeah.
You scan the page left to right, so that's how your eyes are used to looking. If when you're looking for something, you'll instinctively look from left to right when looking for something.
Oh right.
You won't do it consciously, but instinctively you'll look from left to right. You'll kind of scan the room starting at the left to the right. So if you scan the room from right to left, your eyes are picking out not necessarily more, but you're having to almost concentrate slightly more if you're doing this consciously. Concentrate more on what you're looking at and what you're picking out. And I found, it does work. I do find things quicker, I think. Or I find things that I could, like, if I scan the room and I go, okay, hang on, no, look from right to left, and then I'll find it.
That's amazing.
And I don't know if that's placebo. I don't know if that's, just me looking more carefully because I'm looking from right to left.
Yeah, it could be any of those.
But it works.
yeah,
Like,
it works. So
it works.
Do it.
Like, seriously, try it.
I
next
will
time.
try it. I that's something.
I'm saying that to everybody as well because, I'm convinced it works.
Yeah.
And everyone always is kind of like, what? Just thinks it's ridiculous, but
I hate when you say something like that to a person and they completely rubbish it as if as if you're literally explaining
I know.
voodoo to them or
I
something.
know, yeah. It's like, you don't know me, you don't know my life.
Yeah, like fuck off, pal. You don't know your brain. Your brain is fucked up. I actually heard an amazing one recently. That if you have a song stuck in your head, just kind of sing the entire song to yourself, or at least skip to the very end of the song and sing just the last bit of the song to yourself and make it end in your head, and then you're not gonna think about it as much, because I don't know how, like, you definitely know what I'm about to explain, but you listen to an album, when one track on that album ends, you know what's coming next.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know that when track 2 on Lord's album ends, it means that Royals is coming next. Like, you know in your head, and if you were to hear that out of context, that track number 2, I can't remember what it's called, Lux or something.
Yeah.
When that ends, it would be so weird if you didn't hear the next line being, I've never seen a diamond, and, like,
Yeah.
Because that's the way your brain works. So if you do cut to the end of the song, you're kind of making space in your brain to move on to something else.
Ah.
So that's pretty cool. I tend to not really get songs stuck in my head at all, though. So
Mm.
I don't know. It used to happen to me all the time and used to really annoy me, but now it's fine. It doesn't really happen anymore. And that all ties back to this town in Kazakhstan.
We have gone off the rails slightly.
It's been a long time.
It has been a while.
Do you have a story for us next, or will I move into another one of mine?
Feel free to move into another one of yours. I've only got one, and it's very kind of vague. Not vague, but...
We'll go for yours after this one.
Yeah, alright.
So this one is one of my favourite stories of all time, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really short, and it's really simple, and it's really terrifying. So this man in Tokyo lived alone, lived by himself. I don't know how old he actually was, but by all accounts he seems like a nice man. And he felt as though he was the victim of this series of non-stop burglaries, or the ultimate trolling of all time, because his food kept on going missing from his fridge, and just things like that would happen. Like little things here and there would be misplaced, but like the food would go missing and there'd be no empty wrappers for the food everywhere. And this happened over the course of a year, so like I'd imagine it comprises bouts of just perceived insanity and like constant doubt about your, stability. Like if you're there thinking to yourself, like, I fucking bought Cheetos yesterday and now they aren't here, but I didn't eat them, or did I eat them? What happened? What did I do yesterday? Things like that would fuck you up like for an entire year. So eventually one day he came up with a plan to counteract this, and to finally just put his head at ease. And he installed security cameras all over his house, which linked up to his phone, because it was Japan and that's just a thing they can do really easily. But after he observed the footage, he saw a skinny, frail-looking, dark-haired woman wandering around his house, taking things and then disappearing into a closet. And it turns out that she was a 58-year-old homeless woman who had been living in his house for an entire year without his knowledge, and just living off of his table scraps and occasionally taking things from his fridge. And she was found at the top of a closet that had like bed linen and sheets and stuff in it, and she was in a tiny compartment where she just had enough room to lie down, and she got charged with trespassing. It's weird. The police said that she looked neat and tidy, like she made use of the shower and the toilet regularly and things like that. But that's fucking terrifying. Even though nothing came of it, she lived in his house for a year.
No. It's ridiculous. Like, is there a cupboard in your house that you don't look in for over a year? Like,
there literally is not.
Did he not change his bed linen at no point during that year?
See,
like,
he might have like bought more bed linen, because I have like old bed sheets at one section of my room, and then the new stuff because like you kind of don't ever go back to the old stuff when you buy new stuff, do you? So it was probably that type of deal where it's just storage essentially.
Yeah, I mean it's just insane. You'd think that within a year she'd make some sort of, she'd sneeze and he'd kind of go,
yeah, you'd think she'd fuck up like in some way.
Yeah. But that's, it's impressive.
Yeah, it actually is.
To say the least, that she managed to go into hiding essentially for a year. And it really begs the question of, like, say someone is trying to escape from the police and is on the run. What, could he or she just disappear for a year and live in a cupboard?
Yeah. That is so strange. That's kind of like one of the sadder elements of this story is the fact that a homeless woman lived in someone's house for a year and nobody seemed to question, like where she was, because it doesn't. Yeah,
there was no one to notice that she was gone.
Yeah, like there's no point in this story does it say she was reported missing, like, or it doesn't give any backstory to her, because she was essentially just a homeless person that was lost in the homeless grid and nobody cares, and that's actually really sad. So it's kind of like, I kind of feel like while you said it was impressive, it's also kind of nice that she had a home for a year.
Yeah.
Like she didn't hurt anybody, like she took things that weren't hers, and that's not nice because it probably made this guy go a little bit insane. But like
Mm.
I don't know. It's really sad that she had nowhere else to go. It's really sad that that's what her life came to, I guess. Like, because what do you even do in someone's house for a year? Like,
No, yeah.
there's not a whole lot you could do without disturbing things. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you couldn't really go on a computer because it's probably password protected, and even if you
Yeah.
did, it's hard to constantly cover your tracks when you're using someone else's computer and things like that. You know, I don't know. It's kind of a sad story in a way,
No, yeah.
but it's
It's
also
just-
creepy and terrifying.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine finding a 58-year-old woman living in a cupboard in my house.
When he's going over the CCTV footage in my head, it's that grainy black and white.
Oh yeah, yes. I like, and she's shuffling about like something from The Grudge.
Yep, and she has
Yep.
huge hair that's
Yep.
untamed.
Yep, unkempt and covers her face so you can't actually see her face.
Yeah.
She's wearing a long white kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly
yeah. I
that.
know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Uh,
There's no way that that's not terrifying to look at that happening
No,
in
yeah.
your house.
in reality, she might have just been wearing like t-shirt and shorts and had hair tied back and.
And he's looking at full color HD footage.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, on his phone,
Yeah.
and going, hang on, who's this?
Yeah.
With sound.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You never know.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that it is a fucking.
No, yeah, that
amazing-
doesn't. No, yeah, that doesn't. Yeah. But yeah, I was trying to think of a segue, but there's no way to segue into my one, is there really?
That's what I don't even know what I'll call this episode. I'm thinking
Oh, yeah.
Strange Tales of the Unknown or some shit. I don't know.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
But I have long been fascinated, and to be honest, everybody should be fascinated with Jack the Ripper.
Oh hell yeah.
Because possibly the fact that, like, let's start with the fact that the number of victims is actually up in the air for question.
Yep.
I mean, everyone knows about the 5 prostitutes,
Yeah.
but obviously without having not being caught, it could be any number. Across the country, throughout London, it could be any number above 5.
Yeah.
He was never even cited, really, perpetrating his crimes or anything like that, and he just basically got off scot-free doing some of the most brutal murders possible.
And trolling the police
Oh yeah,
at the
yeah.
same time. Like, it's really fucked up that it was in the 19th century,
yeah,
but that doesn't necessarily mean that you could just get away with a lot of shit back then.
No,
Like,
yeah.
It was London, and like, yeah, okay, it was the 1800s, it was the late 1800s, nearly
Yeah.
1900s, but like, it's not easy to evade the police. Like, the London Metropolitan Police were seriously on point with
Yeah,
their...
out in force to try and
Yeah.
figure out who it was.
Rumor has it they even recruited Sherlock Holmes, who is totally a real person now, but
Oh yeah,
it is, though. Like, they were a serious police force, and just because it's the 1800s just doesn't mean that you can go around murdering people and getting away with it. Like, I think that's kind of a perception that a lot of people have that takes away from the sort of the scarier parts of the Jack the Ripper story, because it's actually not like that at all. Like, he had to be seriously malicious and
Yeah.
even more terrifying than you can imagine in order to get away with what he did do, because he sent so many letters to the police as well.
oh yeah,
I think I think he sent 4 letters in total.
and one of them contained was it a fried liver or something like that from one of the victims?
Oh, that rings a bell, actually.
Yeah, I think it was. I have a feeling it was a liver, but I'm not 100%. Oh no! In one of the letters, he described how he fried and ate half of the missing kidney that was from one of the victims.
Oh,
Um,
so weird.
yeah,
Not
Yeah,
that,
it's
not that the whole
really-
thing isn't weird. No, like, I can
No,
understand
yeah.
the killing the prostitutes thing,
no, yeah.
but eating their liver, what the fuck, like.
It's yeah. He sent the half that he didn't eat to the police,
All right.
and then ate the other half.
And nobody knows who this guy is at all.
No, I mean,
Nobody.
there's hundreds upon hundreds of theories for who it is, and each of them comes to the stumbling point of there being absolutely no proof whatsoever.
Yeah, like there's
Like-
even been theories that that he was like a member of the royal family.
Oh,
or
yeah.
that he was the chief of police and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And the reason that it's okay to actually theorize those things is because nobody has any fucking idea who he was. There was a book that came out like last year claiming that he was a Polish guy, which surprise,
Yeah.
surprise, the Daily Mail ran with.
No, yeah,
Um,
naturally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of thing that it was an Irish immigrant as well.
Yeah, well, there was
Possi-
a lot of Irish
Yeah,
immigration.
yeah,
in London.
especially around that time.
Yeah.
And butcher, surgeon, and it's like the list goes on for who it could have been.
Yeah.
And I mean, the scariest part is, well, I say the scariest part, the fact that there was like a smog in London at that time, and there's no way to describe it based on things that you've seen in recent times, like, because it was like a thick, dense black fog, and you'd be within 6 feet, 10 feet of someone and not see them
Yeah.
properly. So he could literally walk up, slash someone's throat, or slash a woman's throat, mutilate her in the street, and people could walk past on the other side of the street and not know.
He did. Did he kill all of them in alleyways and streets?
Yeah, they were in like the quote unquote slums.
Yeah. But that's so fucked up.
Yeah, but there was one where apparently the police, I can't remember what her name was. I'm sure there was one. The police found her and the blood was still draining out of her.
Oh shit.
They were missed him by less than minutes.
Oh my god.
Something ridiculous like that. And there was no sign of him.
It's the greatest murder mystery ever. Well, like for
One
the
of them,
Western
yeah.
world,
Yeah.
like, because it's just so entrenched in so much like
Yeah.
folklore and mythology as well. Like it's legendary serial killer
Mm.
kind of deal. Like it's so fucking. I don't know. I actually like whenever I picture it. Whenever I picture anything about Jack the Ripper, it's always in black and white because it's
Yeah.
1800. So I just think, well, they didn't have color back
It
then.
was in black and white anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because of the smog and things like that. But I always picture a guy with a top hat and a long kind of trench coat, and he might have like any number of knives under there. And
Oh, yeah.
he just makes people disappear and, well,
Oh yeah.
makes people very bloody and, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, and you were saying about it being one of the greatest unsolved murders, like or series of murders.
Yeah.
But then in the lead up to this episode, I was reading, I was looking about JFK as well, and that one is just as confusing. With the amount of cameras, that they've got what 6 or 7 angles.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 or 5. Got 4 or 5 angles of video footage, and there's just no good. There's no good explanation or reason.
Have you ever watched the Zapruder footage of the JFK
Yeah.
assassination?
Yeah.
That's I don't know why I ever watched it. Like you're literally watching a man getting shot
No,
in
yeah.
the head.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy that I don't know, that whole situation is fucked up as well. Like imagine seeing the president of the
I know.
United States being assassinated in front of you.
I know. And such a high profile figure, and there was it's just. That's why it was that's why it was an inside job.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, JFK can't melt steel beams, so
Only with his eyes.
yeah, true.
Only the heart.
His eyes. What does that even mean?
I don't even know.
I'd love to. Like, the thing is, though, what's the guy who actually killed JFK? Is it Lee Harvey Oswald?
Mm.
If you there are so many people that you say that to, and they're like, "Nope, he didn't do it," and you're
Yep.
like, "But why?" And it's because that
Because-
Oliver Stone movie.
Because the angles.
Yeah, but
Because angles.
the Oliver Stone movie about JFK is the whole reason there's a conspiracy theory. Well, no, sorry, it's like the leading driving thing behind the conspiracy theories, and it all hinges on the fact that JFK was sitting diagonally in front of somebody, so he couldn't have been shot because the other guy, but he couldn't have been shot from that angle because the bullet would have ricocheted, and it's an impossible shot because the other guy would have been killed because he was in front. But they weren't sitting diagonally in real
No.
life.
They weren't at all.
No. So that entire movie right there, like, put it in the garbage can, because that point does not count. It's not
No.
like, so therefore, like, you can fuck off. Like, I don't know. I don't really believe in any conspiracy theory or whatever, but like, it's very, 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 like, 99.5% probable that Lee Harvey Oswald did it. So
Yeah.
I don't know why we have to go and find someone else who did it as well. I don't know what the fascination with finding other things, like finding other reasons or other alternative versions of things that happened. I don't really get the fascination with that as such. Like, that's strange to me. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know what
Yeah.
drives that and stuff. But, JFK.
Yeah, the worst thing about the whole JFK video wasn't quite the well, I mean, watching him get shot is pretty bad, but watching, you know, his wife kind of lean back and almost pick up the pieces.
Yeah, it's really.
Just ugh.
I know.
Literally picking up pieces of his skull and brain. Lovely.
I don't know why I laughed. Speaking of gruesome deaths.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this story is one that I read about 3 months ago, and have just been waiting to talk about it on the Midnight Hour ever since, because it's incredible, and it should serve as the most poignant scene in the greatest anti-war movie of all time. Like, this scene is so good. So in the 1970s, during the Korean War, the US Army was obviously involved, operating on South Korea's side to keep them and the North from, like, erasing each other, essentially. There was a huge fear that the North would basically, like, destroy the South and take them over and things like that. So the border, most people will already know this, but the border between the North and South is referred to as the demilitarized zone, which I don't really understand. It seems heavily militarized. I think that might be an ironic name of some sort. But I actually saw an image quite recently of South Korean troops going to open the door to North Korea. For anyone who doesn't know, there's literally a building that one half is in the south, one half is in the north, and they have meetings at a table which is in the middle of the room, and the North people sit on the, like, it's crazy how kind of well this is all kept together. But as the guys from the South were opening the door to the North, they hold hands and hold onto a door so that they don't get dragged into the North. And I think this story is part of the reason why. But the demilitarized zone is sort of the US and South Korean troops, which were called the Joint Security Forces, I think it was. And they had checkpoints sort of set up everywhere in the demilitarized zone, but they had outposts that overlooked these checkpoints so that they could put snipers or, you know, a guy with binoculars on top. But one of the checkpoints was obscured by a massive tree, which they decided they were going to go and trim. So South Korean captain, his last name is Kim, I don't know what his first name is, but he's Captain Kim, and American Lieutenant Mark Barrett. Side note, why do some people call Lieutenant Lieutenant? That's
I have no idea.
probably the most annoying thing that people do, is say Lieutenant when there is no F in that. And don't even get me started on the word Colonel and the complete lack of L in that fucking pronunciation. But Lieutenant Mark Barrett, Captain Kim, and there was another guy by the name of Captain Boniface. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the bridge that they had to cross in order to trim this tree down was on the North's territory, but only just. But the bridge is called the Bridge of No Return. So, like, this is why this is such a great scene, is because it already has, like, foreboding, and you don't even, it's an actual thing that happened. Captain Kim and Mark Barrett didn't bring sidearms with them because they had, I don't know if there was restrictions on what they were allowed to have within the demilitarized zone. I think that's actually why it's called the demilitarized zone, is because they have some sort of ongoing thing where they're only allowed a certain amount of weapons, because I did read that they were only allowed to have 5 armed officers at a time. But they brought 11 American and South Korean soldiers with them. They didn't have sidearms, but they had axes there to cut down the tree branches and things like that. But after they started, they were almost immediately surrounded by 15 North Korean soldiers, which were led by a guy called Pak Chul, whose nickname was Lieutenant Bulldog, because apparently he had a reputation within the area for being a complete cunt. But he told them to stop cutting down the tree because Kim Il-sung, who is Kim Jong-il's dad, and the original... he is the eternal president of North Korea, I think. He's the eternal leader. He's referred to as Dear Leader, I think. But he is still in power there, despite dying in the early 90s. But Lieutenant Bulldog told the American soldiers that Kim Il-sung had personally planted that tree, that he was going to let it nourish under his watch. And Captain Boniface of the Joint Security Forces turned his back to Lieutenant Bulldog and just kept on cutting down the tree. And then Lieutenant Bulldog, in an act of immense movie villainy, carefully removed his watch, wrapped it up in a handkerchief, and put it in his pocket and shouted, "Kill the bastards." And then, with the axes that were dropped by the tree trimmers during the altercation, the North Koreans attacked all of the troops. The entire fight lasted about 30 seconds. Most of the American and South Korean soldiers managed to get away across the Bridge of No Return, just wounded. But the North Koreans kept on taking turns bludgeoning Captain Boniface to death. They eventually drove back to North Korea with his body in their truck, and Lieutenant Barrett's body was found later on that day, and he died in hospital. But what makes this so brutal is that they killed him with objects and axes and cut him to pieces and things like that. They were taking turns doing it because it was such an effort to actually hold the axes, but he was supposedly at the bottom of this hill, and after they got over the Bridge of No Return, the Joint Security Forces observed the North Korean soldiers just taking turns running down the hill and then coming back, and the axe being more bloody each time.
Fucking hell.
Like, they just hacked the guy to death. And that is referred to as the axe murder incident. So that's just a thing. Like, you always think about war as just being a bunch of people on a battlefield shooting guns at each other, or people in trenches or whatever else. You don't really think that someone's gonna get fucking, like, hacked to death in some serious slasher way. Like, it's so fucked up and so grim and just so dark that, I don't know, I read that story and just thought that should be in a movie, and I can't believe that it isn't.
No, it's just brutal is the word. Like barbaric, probably a better one. But I mean, it's ridiculous. Just taking turns to hack this man apart.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's something not right with anybody involved there.
They went back to North Korea, and obviously they spun the story as the American soldiers, like, were the oppressors and the really bad guys.
What was it? They referred to them in the official statement as the American imperialist aggressors.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I think Kim Jong-il actually was not in power as such then, but he was somebody back then, and I think he held a press conference where he was like, "Yeah, those Americans gotta go. This is what they did to obviously turn the public in favor of North Korea," which is probably not a hard thing to do over there, but
probably not difficult.
You always hear stories coming out of North Korea, and I'm so at the point now where I just think, after all of these stories get printed, like the one about Kim Jong-un killing his uncle by feeding him to a pack of lions and things like that, and then they get retracted a few weeks later, and you just, like, they are just fucking with us now. Like, I think there are a lot of actually informed North Koreans who understand that they just have to live in this oppression because there's no way out of it, and they'll be sent to camps if they don't. So I don't even know if they are as sort of controlled as people would like to think, or if they're just doing it because they have to, essentially, or they'll be killed. So it's
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, all of the pictures that you see, these people that have gone to North Korea and taken pictures off the beaten track where they're not meant to have done, or where they've been reprimanded for taking them.
Yeah.
And it's just it does just look like an absolutely dire place. And
Oh, it does.
we've spoken about, I think we've spoken about it before. The drawings of people that have escaped the labour camps.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Those are
those are
just
terrifying.
horrific.
I
They're
I read this story. I think I told it to you. I think I may have even
mm,
told it on the podcast. But this little kid, got given a head of lettuce by a prison guard in one of the
mm,
gulags, and he had to go. He was told to give a leaf of lettuce to every healthy-looking woman he saw. So he
yeah.
did, and then within a few hours, they were vomiting up their guts and were
Ugh.
dead. So like, you don't even know what kind of experimentations they're doing and stuff. Like,
Uh,
they have gulags built into their mountains where they're
ugh.
constantly loading in like heavy artillery and trucks and stuff. And you know that's where they test their fucking military stuff too.
Yeah.
And stuff like chemical warfare tools and things of that nature.
Yeah, it's not. It's not right. I mean, there's a multitude of things that are just completely wrong. I read the thing the other day saying that they're facing their worst ever famine, and saying that it's their worst ever is, it's no small thing. Seeing as that they had a famine, I say fairly recently, within the last, what was it, 10 years,
Oh yeah.
that wiped out a third of their population or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, and they had a currency conversion. They had a year where they converted their currency, and it was like the most disastrous currency conversion of all
Yeah.
time. Like, their new currency had just completely failed, and like that left so many people, like the economy, because people do actually have jobs there, and people do holiday there, like within North Korea and things like that. There are the upper echelons of society who are accepting of their oppressors and get to sort of live a relatively normal life within that place. But even those people got shafted by the complete downturn in the economy, I guess. But it must be such a hard economy to maintain when like it's obviously
Yeah.
it's a completely closed off economy.
It's weird. I mean, I think they do some trade with. I want to say I think they do some trade with China,
Oh, I think they do, yeah. But it's not.
but it's nothing in the grand scheme of things.
No, I don't think it's like an official trade avenue like it would be like between, say, Ireland and the UK. I don't think it's like that. I think it's more that they do favors for each other.
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
they import a lot from America, or more specifically, like the leaders do. They, I know that when Kim Jong Il was in power, like he was notorious for importing like crates and crates of whiskey and American movies and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, they
Didn't he claim to have the largest film, the largest DVD collection or something like that in the world?
Yeah.
At one point,
Yeah.
because he just literally had every DVD. I don't know how. Again, much like his playing a golf course of 18 holes in one is true, but
Yeah. It's interesting because Kim Jong Il was a massive movie fan, and he did just drink whiskey and watch movies. But Hitler was also a massive movie fan. Hitler used to watch movies like every single night. Hitler used to stay up till like 3 a.m. watching movies and just writing in his journal that he watched the movie and what he thought of it. Like, he documented every single movie that he watched, which is really interesting, I find. A lot of people know as well that Hitler was a massive Charlie Chaplin fan, and that's where a lot of people think that that's where he actually got his moustache from. He modeled himself on Charlie Chaplin, which isn't really going to be too much of a surprise, like, because Charlie Chaplin was one of the biggest celebrities at that time. But Hitler actually watched The Great Dictator twice, and no one knows what he thought of it, but they know that he watched it, which is kind of interesting because that's a movie, like, written, directed, produced, and paid for by his favorite actor in the world, and it is all about pissing all over everything Hitler had to do. I'd love to know what he actually thought of it.
Yeah, that'd definitely be interesting to talk to him and see what he. I don't know, just see what he has to say about some movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Can you imagine sitting down around the table with, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, just going, so...
Kim Jong-il.
So, guys,
You guys seen the new Fast and Furious movie?
Yeah, I've just shown you all Fast and Furious 7. Thoughts?
Come on.
I know you didn't. I know I didn't show you the first 6, but...
Hitler would say, "I built those roads that they drove on," and things like that. I don't really. Yeah, that would be fucked up. That should be a whole nother podcast where we get everyone to play the part of a dictator, and they have to tell us what they think of certain movies and things.
Go into hiatus for a few months just to really get into character,
Yeah.
learn count about them, become them.
Go into hiatus and infiltrate the higher realms of political parties in certain countries and become a dictator for about 6 months, and then come back just to play the part of someone in an hour-long episode of a podcast on YouTube. Perfect.
Brilliant.
I got one more story.
Yeah.
That is referred to as the Rosenheim poltergeist, and Rosenheim is a place in Bavaria, and in the late 1960s, so the guy who, I actually thought that it was a woman who was on the receiving end of all of this stuff. Okay, yeah. So the story is that this guy Hans Bender, who was a parapsychologist, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means.
Paranormal psychologist. He is a psychologist for ghosts.
Oh, seriously, that's what it is?
I don't know. I'm just guessing by the whole parapsychologist.
I thought it was like, you know the way like paratrooper is a thing. I thought it was like some military thing.
Pseudoscience concerned with the investigation of paranormal and psychic phenomena.
Alright. I don't care about this story anymore. So, this guy, anyway, said that there were lots of like electrical and physical disturbances in Sigmund Adams' office, which were caused by the telekinetic powers of his secretary, Anne-Marie. The whole story is that this guy, Sigmund Adam, worked in a law firm, and their offices were constantly under attack by exploding lights, and like light bulbs swinging back and forth all over the place, furniture being lifted and thrown across the room, fluid leaking from the office copier. That's just bad maintenance, mate. But all of this stuff happened, and like there was loads of outgoing calls made that couldn't have been made at that time and things like that. But it only happened on weekends, and none of it was captured on video. Isn't that strange?
So there wasn't anyone in there just going in at the weekend and fucking everything up.
It could have been that either. Yeah, you never know.
You know, could have been.
But yeah, Hans Bender, the parapsychologist, said, "Oh yes, this is the telekinetic powers of the woman." So
this young woman, he was like, it's her. He called her a typical poltergeist.
Yeah.
But then it also says she told him that she was frustrated with her job and distressed over a broken marriage engagement, and that everything stopped when she left. So no one thought she's coming at the weekend and just fucking shit up, taking her anger out on everything here. Like, no, it's a poltergeist. Yeah. She's a poltergeist.
I can't tell you, right? I read this Wikipedia article when I was about 18.
Yeah.
And I was living by myself at the time, and I was not terrified or anything, but like I was scared by it because I didn't like the idea of that being a thing that happened.
No.
But I'm reading it now, and it is so quite clearly a load of fucking bullshit. And it's really annoying that I have become such a cynic that I just have no time for this kind of bullshit at all. No time for it.
I gave up on this whole story when I read the phrase parapsychologist.
So did I. As soon as I read that, I actually thought that he was some kind of renowned like military guy, you know, because I just read the word para and I just thought, well, paratroops, that's a thing, and I know that they are just guys who parachute, but for some reason I just thought that he had some hand in the military. But no, he was a pseudoscientist and a bullshitter basically.
Yep.
And that's so, like, you wonder why people do this, but then you just have to think that, like, cryptozoology is a thing that people are interested in, and, like, chasing Bigfoot is a thing people do, despite the fact that that whole video was a complete hoax, and it's been admitted that it was a hoax.
Yep.
And there's this Twitter account called Unexplained Sightings, right? And the picture of it is the typical picture
Still,
of, you know the
video.
Loch Ness one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the Loch Ness picture, which was admitted that it was a fucking hoax.
Oh, there's been about 5 or 6 different hoaxes for the Loch Ness monster. There is,
Hoaxastices, I believe.
yeah, I believe that's correct. But there is a website that you can go on. I think I've mentioned this before. There's a website that you can go on, which from some cottage or from some house. It's a web stream. It's a webcam stream of Loch Ness. You can sit there and watch it for hours and hours and see if you can spot Nessie.
Which is crazy. Have you seen Loch Ness?
It's massive.
It's a fucking lake. Like,
Yeah.
it's been explored from front to back. There is
Top to bottom. Yeah, there is nothing hiding down there.
They think there used to be a traveling circus that passed through there in, I don't know, I want to say maybe the early 1900s. It could have been the 1800s, something like that. But apparently the leading theory behind the whole Loch Ness Monster thing is that someone saw, because there was a circus traveling through,
Yeah.
one of the animals got loose, and someone saw an animal they'd never seen before, because you do see exotic creatures at the zoo, and that's pretty much where it came from, was that it was around the Loch Ness area. But that photo that the black and white one of the tentacle looking thing, or trunk of an elephant, or whatever it is that's sticking out of Loch Ness, or like a dinosaur's head kind of thing, is a hoax, and it's been admitted that it was a hoax, and the first place it was ever published was the Daily Mail. So if that doesn't make your mind up, nothing ever will. Like, you're committed to believing in something because you want to believe in it, and that's pretty much what it is. And there's nothing wrong with that either. It would be so cool if there were things that we didn't know about the planet. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
There are lots of things.
Yeah.
It would be so cool if there were things that, like, it would be so cool if they found woolly mammoths in South America tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like,
but I mean, it's more likely that you'll find something at the bottom of the Mariana Trench than in Loch Ness.
I've heard, like, there are increasing reports of people just being snatched from, as, like, kind of submarines become more and more well created and built and mass produced and stuff. There are those little pods that James Cameron used to observe the bottom of Mariana's Trench. Those are being mass produced, and this is a thing that they don't want you to know. But there are so many reports of those surfacing with the glass shattered and nobody inside.
Yeah, or just not surfacing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So dark
I don't know.
forces are at play.
There are some very wet and dark forces at play.
Yeah. And if you don't believe in things like that, well, you'll be the first to go.
Yeah. They'll grab you from the shores before you know it.
Yeah. Oh, that would be so scary.
That would be terrifying. That would actually be terrifying.
I know.
And having a nice romantic stroll along the beach and suddenly just gone. Because that's the sound that it would make.
Exactly.
No splashing, just a lot of airy kind of sounds.
Yeah. Oh, that is a scary, scary thought. Did you see, by the way, that GIF I tweeted you?
Yes, I replied, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Yeah, fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Something that was akin to the you seen the one of the giant squid that was caught on one of those deep sea diving cameras?
Yes.
Yeah, it's akin to that one, and that terrifies me.
Those are so cool. This was a good episode.
Yeah. Toot our own horn a little bit, yeah, it was.
It was very, very good. You all enjoyed this episode.
Alright, calm down.
Yeah.
Parapsychologist.
We'll leave that, and then next week we'll do ocean mysteries or something.
Oh, Jesus. Crikey. Ocean mysteries.
And I distinctly heard my grandmother call me. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I deserve to be here. I'm not a perfect person. And my grandmother said to me, you were a child sent away to school. And as a child, we expected that you would spill your milk, It's the manner in which you clean it up that gives us cause for pride. I asked what was the nature of the light when they told me that I would not be allowed to go in. I said, "Is the light God?" And it was communicated to me, no, that the light is not God. The light is what happens when God breathes. And at that point I remember thinking, I'm standing in the breath of God.